Hello, good afternoon, or good morning, depending on your time zone. Welcome to our 3RNET annual conference, pre-conference webinar. My name is Christine Morin. I am 3RNET's Director of Communications and Marketing, and I'm so happy you all can join us today. We have with us two speakers from PracticeLink, who are going to talk with us about the power of passive recruitment. I can't wait to hear what they have to share with us. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. First and foremost, I want to, on behalf of 3RNET, extend a huge thank you to PracticeLink. They are, again, our exclusive platinum partner for our annual conference. And they're always so generous with their support of our organization and our mission. And so we appreciate that support. They've been a longtime supporter, and we appreciate Lake and Gray sharing their time and expertise with us today. We will certainly try to keep lines muted so that we have a clean recording of this, and we will send out the recording for all of you and for anyone who isn't able to join us today. If you're familiar with Zoom, we do have the chat feature enabled. I'm sure you're going to have lots of questions. We welcome and encourage those. Please pop them in the chat. If we have kind of a natural pause or can fit them in, I'll sure try to chime in and ask those questions. But if we can't get to them during the presentation, we'll have some time at the end. So if you want to save them for the end as well, you're more than welcome to do that. So with that, I want to briefly introduce our fantastic speakers today, and then I will turn it over. So with us, we have Gray Peretti. Gray is a sales account manager with PracticeLink, where she began working in 2013. She has over 20 years of experience in healthcare recruitment and staffing. She's presented for the Mid-Atlantic Physician Recruiters Alliance, Physician Recruitment Intensive Training, and PracticeLink University workshops across the country. Gray earned a Bachelor of Science in Communication from Radford University in 2002. She's a founding board member and current secretary of the West Virginia Community Services for Women, a nonprofit in her hometown of Bluefield. When she isn't working, Gray enjoys boxing or playing pickleball with her husband. Those are great. If we had time, I would want to learn more about that, Gray, but that's for another day. She enjoys playing with her husband, Anthony, and 13-year-old son, Eli. Joining Gray, we have Lake Weichel. Lake is a customer success manager with PracticeLink. I love that title, where he began working in 2014. He graduated with a Bachelor of Science from West Virginia University in 1996. Prior to joining PracticeLink, he was a claims representative with Nationwide Insurance for 15 years. He also worked as a correctional officer for 3 years after graduating from WVU. Lake enjoys hunting, fishing, and playing golf. He is married, has twin boys, both currently attending his alma mater, WVU, which is pretty cool. So thank you, Gray and Lake, for joining us today. We can't wait to hear what you have to share with us about passive recruitment. And with that, I'll turn it over to you both.
Thanks so much, Christine. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, thanks, Christine.
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly.
Awesome. Well, we are both excited to be here. As she mentioned, I'm Gray Peretti. Lake, my coworker, Lake Weichel, is joining me today in hosting. We've actually been working together as a team for, I guess it's been about 9 years now, right, Lake? If not, maybe, probably for him, it probably feels more like 20 years working with me.
Yeah, for my entire career with PracticeLink.
Yes, yeah, we've been together for Lake's entire career, and we work to assist all of the clients in our region with their physician recruitment. We cover all of the Mid-Atlantic, New England, and then also we have the state of Tennessee as well. But we are both very excited to join you today. We appreciate the opportunity. We're both, I think, very passionate about this subject. It's near and dear to our hearts, so we're excited to provide you with some more information. I do want to start by saying it has been a minute since Lake and I hosted a webinar, so hopefully we aren't too rusty. But just as a safety precaution, we ask that you buckle up, keep your hands and arms in the vehicle and remain seated at all times because we are going to get started. So thanks for having us. So I want to start things off by talking about a very smart, successful guy by the name of Steve Jobs. Some of you might have heard of him. He was once quoted saying, "The secret of my success is that we've gone to exceptional lengths to hire the best people in the world." And I think those exceptional lengths to seek out, locate, and hire the very best people involve passive recruitment. The understanding passive recruitment actually requires an understanding of passive candidates. So what is passive candidate? A passive candidate is an individual who is currently employed and not actively seeking a career change or new opportunity. So these candidates are typically happy, if not happy, at least satisfied in their current role, but we want them because of their skills and their experience. So some might say that recruiting passive candidates is too time consuming, maybe not a lot of payout, but in the current physician recruitment landscape, passive recruitment is an absolute necessity. And we're here today to convince you of that. We want to look at passive candidates by the numbers. So let's take a look at some current data on passive candidates. According to LinkedIn, 75% of the workforce are currently passive candidates. 60% of that 75% are not actually seeking a new job, but they're actually open to discussing or looking into new opportunities. When it comes specifically speaking to PracticeLink system, it's kind of similar to what LinkedIn has reported. 76% of the candidates in our database are either marked as not looking or open to new opportunities, but they're actually not visible to employers. So they also account for 18.5% of PracticeLink's total job views and 17% of our job responses. And since they account for more than 18% of our job views, it makes not only posting all of your jobs on whatever job board you're using, very, very important, but also the quality of your job postings. And we're going to touch on that a little later in the presentation. So let's drill down and look at some anonymous job searches on PracticeLink. And take a moment to kind of process these numbers. This is a specific list of job searches by specialty on PracticeLink that are completely passive. So one thing that's important to note with our system is that we do not require that candidates register in order to view job postings on our site. And we do that for several reasons. The first would be we want our clients' jobs to be getting the most promotion, the most visibility and exposure possible to all candidates, regardless of their status. But we also want to provide candidates with anonymity if they're passively looking for jobs. And this numbers list is basically representative of the 2021 anonymous passive job searches, just a couple of different specialties to give you an idea. So if we take a look at this, the top three are primary care, then you've got psychiatry, neurology, OBGYN, gastro, anesthesiology, emergency medicine, and then rounding it out with pediatrics. So I always tell a story relative to passive searches on our site. My best friend is a general surgeon. Her name's Amanda. So we're going to call this is going to be the Amanda story. You'll be hearing about her later. But a couple years back, she's been in practice for, I guess now it's been a little over 12 years. So a couple years ago, she was looking for a new opportunity. She was working for a current client that she knew utilized our site. She didn't want to register her profile. Even after her best friend, me, was like, hey, look, I promise that there's a way that you can privately search and nobody will see your information. And she still just didn't want to do that. So she would come to the site, view the jobs, and then reach out to the recruiters directly. and she's been at her new job for a little over 3 years now. Very happy, found it through PracticeLink, but never registered her profile with us. So, Amanda is a good example of someone who would be coming to the site and searching our system for jobs without actually registering. So let's talk a little bit about why it's important to prioritize passive recruitment. First off, the competition to recruit them is low. So why do you think that is? Like, what's your take on this? Why do you think that the competition to recruit passive candidates is low?
I mean, it's hard. I mean, recruitment of passive candidates, I mean, it's more challenging. It's a slower process and requires a lot more work.
Absolutely. I agree with you completely. So, recruitment of passive candidates, like you said, it's more challenging. It's a slower process. It requires more work. And therefore, often only, some would argue to say the more seasoned recruiters who are used to that process are willing to take the time to actually do it because it requires a lot more effort. Also, they make up 3/4 of the workforce. So the bulk of the market of candidates is actually passive. If you're only evaluating people who are actively looking, then you're missing out on a huge piece of the pie. They're 17% less likely to need skill development training. So because they tend to be more highly qualified, they have more experience, they tend to require less skill development training. They're 120% more likely to make a positive impact. I like to explain this with another quote. This is just one of my favorites. If you think it's expensive to hire a professional, wait until you hire an amateur. In other words, these passive hires can spare your organization time and money, and they can also improve culture and morale. They're great additions to your candidate pipeline. So even if you're making an effort to contact these folks and you're not making a match, if you are able to connect with passive candidates, but they're not ready to make a change, work to build and nurture a relationship with them, and you may be able to recruit them down the road when it's the right time for them or the right time for your organization. They can be recruited. They can be hired. We've seen it. We've seen the successes of our clients. Another great thing about passive candidates is that they're not actively looking, so they're not juggling as many interviews and offers as active candidates. If you can pique their interest, then you're facing far less competition for their attention than all those active candidates who are reviewing numerous offers and going on numerous interviews, and they have a lot more to consider than the passive candidate. So some of you are probably already, practicing passive recruitment. You already have sort of a routine or a strategy, but for those of you who don't, we often get asked how much time you should allocate for recruiting passive job seekers. And the safe place that Workable says to start is with just 30 minutes per week, just to map out a 30-minute block of time within your calendar. And then as you get a feel for what's working, what's not working, then you can gradually increase your time allocation from there. But once you have some time penciled in your calendar to passively recruit, we want to talk about where to find these candidates. So where can passive candidates be found? The idea is to target these folks, you must look where they look and go where they go. So a great place to start online is candidate databases. Just based on those numbers that we looked at earlier of the passive searches of the PracticeLink system, I would imagine no matter what job board you're using, they're also getting a lot of passive searches on their site. So this is a great place to start. And it makes sense for me to recommend passive candidate databases because we're talking about passive recruitment. But active candidate databases like PracticeLink can also be a great tool as well. Let's say, for example, a candidate maybe registered with PracticeLink in 2019, and they uploaded their CV, they created a profile, and they forgot to take that profile down. And you're looking at it and thinking, well, this is outdated, they're not looking anymore. But we want to encourage you to not automatically discount that candidate. Instead, look at the trajectory of their career. That candidate may have grown into a great fit for your role. Maybe in 2019, they weren't, but just because that's when they initially registered with us. Some of those folks just keep their profile active because they're always exploring their options. Some of them have just forgot to take it down. But we just always, remind you not to discount someone just based on that alone, because oftentimes, it may be a good time for them now. Also, directories to find candidates in residency programs. So PracticeLink actually has a built-in, what we call the PracticeLink GME. If you are a client of ours, it's a great tool. I encourage you to reach out to your account manager and they can show you where to locate that. It's actually under the resources section of PracticeLink, but it provides you with access to more than 11,000 medical education programs nationwide. You can search based on specialty, state, and it gives you a full directory of all of the information on the program's director and coordinator and their contact information. Another great resource is your own organization's database. While these candidates may be a bit stale in your system, they might not have been the right fit for a previous role, but they could now be the perfect for a current opportunity. So the only stipulation I always like to mention here is that you want to make sure to be familiar with their candidate experience previously. Maybe if they were rejected for an opportunity before, it might be slightly trickier to entice them to want to work for your organization again. So just something to bear in mind when you're reaching back out to those folks. Okay, so looking at meetings, conferences, and conventions. First thing we recommend is, of course, virtual and in-person career fairs. With most companies shifting from in-person career fairs to a virtual platform, PracticeLink included, of course, this has provided an increase in the number of passive physicians choosing to attend. So we're seeing a much bigger spike in practicing physicians, depending upon location, but we've seen a lot more practicing physicians choosing to participate in virtual fairs, just because I think of the sheer landscape of it. They like that they can come in and just go to the specific virtual booths that they're interested in versus an in-person fair where they feel more obligated to go around the entire room, especially those who are looking for that anonymity are kind of leaning towards that virtual platform. Of course, specialty conferences and association websites. Great way to think about it is, if you're recruiting for a pediatric oncologist, where would you look for them? And then think about where pediatric oncologists hang out on the web. Is it their association website? Is it a particular publication or journal? You always need to consider where the people that you're targeting live at online. And also, don't be afraid to ask physicians, on staff who are already part of your team, where they hang out online. They're a great resource to let you know, what's work related, some of the sites that they visit often, where you could start to do searches or advertisements. Referrals. I know probably I'm preaching to the choir. A lot of you are going to be like, yeah, that's one of the best, greatest ways that we could ever get, gain a physician or a provider. One of the things when a candidate when one of your practicing physicians reaches out to a passive candidate, through an employer referral, if they're a happily employed physician and they're sharing a job posting or recommending that physician consider the role, that message carries the weight of their own personal endorsement. This peer-to-peer strategy is so much more impactful than any corporate outreach, any other type of outreach. It's just something that is so impactful with physicians. So definitely utilize, your highly qualified, like your best physicians for referrals. And then recruiter networks. I know Lake and I've talked about this so much. Ever since we came to work at PracticeLink, I was never in the physician recruitment industry previously, but one of the things that I noticed immediately in going to these association conferences was the willingness for you guys to refer one another and assist one another. It's like the most competitive industry that I've ever been a part of, but just it's so refreshing to see your willingness to work together. You're all competing for the same pool of candidates, but yet you're still willing to teach one another and refer. And it's just such a wonderful, every association we've ever been affiliated with or worked with has been wonderful to see that connection. So be sure to take advantage of that. Of course, publications and websites. I'm going to mention what I know and love, and that is PracticeLink magazine. this publication, that it goes out every quarter, and it goes out to more than 90,000 practicing physicians, residents, and fellows. So there's a lot of other things like this or similar to this where you're going to be able to communicate your message and your opportunities to a different population of candidates, not necessarily the same candidates that see the job postings in PracticeLink, but it's a much larger distribution list. So you're getting that message and the opportunities out to a lot broader of an audience. Of course, physician-specific job boards, even if you're getting specialty-specific. And then make sure that you're posting all of your jobs so that passive candidates know they exist. Going back to the Amanda story, if the job that she reached out to the recruiter about was not listed on PracticeLink, I don't know how she would have come across it otherwise. So she may have never known that opportunity existed unless she came across it on the job board. So now we've talked about where to find them. How do you attract them? So how are you going to find and attract passive candidates? So the first thing that I'm going to say is just changing your approach, kind of wiping the slate clean of what your idea and expectation is, because passive candidates are understandably more challenging to engage, which in turn means that it takes more time to connect, which is frustrating. To connect with them, it's going to require a complete overhaul of your current strategy. It's not going to be as hurried of a circumstance or a situation. You must be willing to change your approach. How can we do that? You want to be prepared to take it slow. Passive recruitment is a longer term game. These physicians are going to be hard to get to at first, but you just want to stay disciplined in your efforts. And, passive candidates don't respond well to a process that's hurried. So you just want to bear in mind initially that you need to take it a little slower. Building rapport. So with passive recruitment, relationships matter. So you want to make that personal connection first. A good example that we use is maybe you begin to build a relationship by researching a physician, discovering one of their blogs, and commenting on the content. And that being sort of the initial touch point before you reach out to them. So kind of just working to build that initial rapport. Of course, my favorite is sell it. And I know you guys are already like, oh gosh, sell it. But when I say sell it, please don't misunderstand. You don't want to pitch a passive candidate the first time they respond, but just remember the woo factor. You've all been working with physicians way longer than me, and they love to be wooed. I mean, any qualified person who's being reached out to about a job opportunity who knows their worth likes that woo factor. So when reaching out to them, you just want to make sure that you use your research and explain why you're convinced that they and only they are the perfect fit for the opportunity versus just some, generic introduction. Be flexible. At PracticeLink, we like to call it being bendy. Be bendy. When you're, talking to a passive candidate or when they show interest initially is when flexibility is key. You have to remember that they don't necessarily need the job, so the ball is in their court. And you'll want to be accommodating to their schedule and their requests. However, just as quickly as I tell you to take it slow, once they're really interested, you need to hire them as quickly as possible because then they get the bug. Then they're ready to change jobs because they're interested. So you want to make sure to move that along as quickly as possible before they become an active candidate and then start reaching out to your competitors. Okay, so we're going to circle back to those anonymous or passive PracticeLink job searches that I mentioned earlier. Even though these candidates are passive, the numbers show that they're still searching for searching job boards. Psychiatry is a great example. So in 2021, there were more than 850,000 passive job searches on PracticeLink.com. Those type of numbers alone show the importance and the impact of quality postings. So let me take a quick sip of water, sorry. So how do we create quality job postings? We're going to jump into that. Consider your ideal candidate. So I want each and every one of you to think back to your previous hires and consider who you feel is the ideal provider. Who is like your best one yet? I know everybody has to have that one they kind of put up on a pedestal to keep you going every day. Like, if I could just clone Dr. Smith over and over and over again, my life would be so much easier. So once you have that person in mind, you want to consider writing and tailoring your job postings to attract that person. Top talent has to be reassured and persuaded to make a change. And I would even encourage you, if you struggle with this at all, like on the creativity side, talk to Dr. Smith and ask him what drove him to work. How have you been able to retain him for 15 years? What does he love about it? What are the things that Dr. Smith, write it for Dr. Smith, basically, is what I'm saying. You know, back in the spring of this year, PracticeLink hosted a physician panel during AAPPR in Chicago. And during that panel, the physicians were asked what one piece of advice they would give to the recruiters. And one that stuck out to me, one physician spoke specifically to job postings. And he said that he would get frustrated because he felt like it was limited information that he was getting in the posting. And he said that he and a lot of his friends just wished that the recruiters would put as much information as possible in the job initially. And that's hence why I've listed here detail, and more detail. I know that there is probably a fine line. There is a point where Lake would probably call you and say, hey, Christine, that's a little too much detail. So it's kind of a fine line with that. But you do want to include just all those things that you know, especially a more highly qualified physician would want to know up front without having to reach out to you to ask those questions. And if all else fails, think about Amanda, and we'll keep going back to her. Think about all the Amandas out there, you know, anonymously searching your job postings, and if she saw that job, would she apply to it? Now that we've covered building quality job postings, we want to touch on how to maximize job postings. And honestly, this is really Lake's specialty more than mine. He works with thousands of clients, you know, every quarter to, you know, kind of help them to optimize and maximize their job postings. So I'm going to pass the baton over to him for a little while to talk to you about these.
Thanks, Gray. All right. We'll kind of start with reviewing and enhancing your organization, facility, and recruiter profiles. Basically, the organizational profile is where you enter information to highlight the best features of your company. If your organization has a website or a link, make sure to have that on the opportunity because, again, there's a lot of passive candidates out there that may actually want to click on that link, go back to your own site, and if you have a careers page, they may actually apply through your own careers page. You also want to make sure that you add your logo. Also, you can add a slideshow or additional photos to the job postings. And if you guys have a video, that would be very good. I mean, like I said, even if you have a 30-second testimonial from one of your current physicians, you know, that would be great to add to that posting. Now, with regards to facilities, sometimes you have one facility or you can have multiple facilities. But the best thing to do is, if you have multiple facilities, is to brand each facility separately, you know, with its own logo, with its own address, with its own photos and videos if you have that. Also, with regards to your recruiter profile, make sure you add your headshot or your photo to your profile. You know, people, like when they're looking for jobs, they want to see your photo. And even if there's a section that you can add like a little background information about yourself, make sure to utilize that as well. Now, utilizing templates. Basically, whether you're posting multiple opportunities, you know, for one facility or multiple opportunities from numerous facilities within your health organization, your job posting templates can maintain a uniform and consistent structure. And this should include like an opportunity summary, you know, what you're seeking, such as a specialty, or whether the position is for a physician or nurse practitioner, physician assistant, or another role. You also want to include the position highlights, you know, specific details about the cost schedule, compensation, you know, benefits and other offerings, you know, what's in it for me. They really like that in bullet point form. They're looking at these on the mobile devices. So I know Gray mentioned detail, but they don't want to read War and Peace. They like that detail and what's in it for me in like bullet point form. Now the company description, like I said, you know, background of your organizational vision, you know, your values, your missions, your culture, details about the hiring facility, you know, information about such patient volume, size, awards, or significant, you know, things like that. Also, you want to include community and lifestyle descriptions, things about your community, popular attractions, anything cool about your area you think that physicians would love, and the benefits of living in that area. Like I said, I live in a small town, and our office in a small town of Hinton, West Virginia. I mean, it's a small town around 2,500. We have one stoplight. If you want to, have a big city life, you're not going to come to Hinton. But if you love the outdoors, I mean, we have 2 lakes, we have 2 state parks, so it's a great place to live and enjoy life. But again, there's certain things in each community that you can really promote. Now, also, kind of just going back to the details, and Grace said kind of write, go to your best physician and kind of write that information for them. But you can also, the key to writing or updating job posting templates, is to do from your candidate's perspective, like she mentioned. In other words, picture yourself as the candidate. Are the highlights and background you provide about your health system and surrounding communities attractive and compelling? Have you included what you would want or need to know about an opportunity before taking the next step to apply? So kind of look at it, from a different perspective as well. Now, featuring postings on job boards, like I said, on PracticeLink, I'm sure all job boards kind of have similar features on that. But if you really have a pressing need, I mean, there's options maybe for even additional cost if you need to either highlight a job or feature a job. That's always kind of, a nice little emphasis on that. And then also use a compelling job headline. As a candidate scrolls, through all the job listings, and like I said, when they complete a search, it might be 20 jobs that come up on that one search. Your headline is often the only chance to catch their attention and get him or her to be considered the position. Consider how your headline is going to open that door for you. Showcase what the value proposition, what's really cool about the organization or the community or something you think is going to catch their attention. And Gray even mentioned this before, speak with some of your current physicians. Why do they love working for your organization? Or why do they love working in that area or community? And if they love it, someone else is going to love it as well. So really use them as a resource.
Yeah, I think the headline's huge. I mean, I think that's something that that's going to translate no matter what job board you use, because I think they all offer pretty much a headline opportunity. And we see it so often in our system. And I know it happens due to time constraints. You're busy, you can't come up with something right off the cuff. And so you just type in family medicine opportunity in, Providence, Rhode Island. But take advantage of that, because we already pull the specialty and the location. So it's basically unused space. You're basically duplicating what the candidate can already see. So whatever you think is the biggest draw or the greatest thing about the opportunity, try to incorporate that into the headline. But, and Lake, I know you have a document that we can share that. Christine, we can send it to you, in talking about utilizing templates. That's kind of like having a uniform structural way of how each one of your job postings, that way any and all of your recruiters are using the same template. It's not necessarily the same information, it's just the same structure. So we have a nice little sheet that's front and back that we can send to you for you to share, that talks about utilizing templates and just kind of a standard, good job posting template.
Yeah, and with regards to your headline, like I said, just kind of keep that refreshed as well. Once in a while, go into your job, even if you don't change anything in that job description, change your headline. Maybe one time you're promoting something about the organization, and maybe, a month later you change that headline and promote something about the area. So kind of use that, keep that job refreshed as well.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lake. Let's see, let me refresh my memory on what I'm talking about next. Okay. Employer branding. So simply put, a positive employer brand just communicates that the organization is a good employer and a great place to work. So it's important. A strong employer brand is going to help you to promote candidate awareness. It's just going to give recognition of your organization. It'll help establish trust among potential prospects, and it's also going to distinguish you from the competition. So if you can work with your marketing department, if you don't currently have a strong employer brand, if you need some white papers or data to help, we can send you some information like that, to provide to your administration on the importance of that. but it's definitely a very important thing not to overlook. And you know, like I said, you can work with your marketing team to help you build and strengthen your brand. And this is really just kind of about consistency, keeping your logos, color schemes. We mentioned your job posting content, your templates, pretty consistent across the board. You know, emphasizing or making your culture a cornerstone. Be communicating, reiterating your vision and your values. And then, of course, taking advantage of advertising opportunities. You know, part of building your employer brand is being seen, being recognized is important. And then showing up when it counts. So be sure, especially to attend career fairs locally, conferences locally, but we also definitely encourage you to consider, you know, most people in and around your area know who you are. It's outside of your area that you struggle most with, especially when you're in, you know, very rural locations. It's still important to kind of get out and make a name for yourself. Strengthening your social media presence. So passive candidates are more tech savvy than ever before. You know, they communicate through Snapchat and Slack and Instagram and every other digital networking platform on the planet. And the days of expecting them to voluntarily upload their CV to your ATS are basically over, unfortunately. You know, their days are packed with social media. They're constantly being stimulated by that. So if you can find your way to them through social media, it's a great strategy. And you want to pivot your social media accounts. So if, you know, this requires some organization as well. We actually have clients that I know of who have a specific team member within the recruitment that actually handles maintaining a steady posting schedule and consistent presence. So every week on this day, they post something about this, or you know, they post some sort of resource content on this day. So having a steady posting schedule is very helpful. Utilizing as many different social channels as possible. I know that they have, I can't make any recommendations, but I was talking to someone the other day, and I know there's a lot of clients now who utilize, you know, someone who can manage all of their social media, and one post gets pushed everywhere, to Twitter, to LinkedIn, to all of that. So that's something you can look into as well, so that way you're utilizing them all and you're also being consistent, having a consistent presence with them all. Sharing slice of life content. So this is basically just kind of uplifting positive happenings within your community and your organization. People love that stuff. It's I think it gives them sort of a good indication of how serious your organization takes things, or if it's a little more lighthearted and more uplifting. Providing information that helps physicians. This is PracticeLink strategy from the jump. That's what we do. We work to become a resource with the candidates who are looking for jobs initially, even before they know that they need us as a resource. We start to connect with them very early in their medical training. We become a resource to them. They start to trust in us as a resource with the tools that we offer them. And then that way they remember us when they're ready to search for their first job or their next job. So being able to provide information that helps you be a resource to them is definitely relevant. Also recognizing and elevating your health system's current staff. So, you know, just showcasing physicians, employees, just having some sort of recognition that you put on social media, I think speaks volumes. I know it does to me. Like, I always love to see the organizations who are giving kudos to their staff and their employees, and that's going to tell the physician that that's something they'd be able to experience there that they're maybe not experiencing in their current employer. Okay, we're in the home stretch, guys. Number 5 is emails. You want to get personal. So, you know, the candidates that you're attempting to connect with, they're not stupid, and they're going to see right through a generic email template. And if you want to capture their attention, you're going to have to prove that you've done your research. And that's where it comes back to the passive recruitment strategy is so much more time consuming. But I think it just takes one for, you know, the payout for you to realize. I see where Caroline listed in the chat low return on investment, and I get it. I agree with you. It is definitely a much, physician recruitment is slow, but passive physician recruitment is even slower. So I understand that completely. But when you're working to capture their attention, I think you just really have to prove that you've done the research and that you can genuinely pinpoint, why you're reaching out to them and why you think they're an ideal fit. Don't just tell them, that you think that they're perfect fit, but tell them why. They want to know why. When they know that you've taken the time to figure out why, then they're really it's going to pique their interest much more. Remember that woo factor I mentioned earlier. We all know they love to be wooed. Finally, don't be a spammer. Limit your frequency. Once you have started to communicate with this person, consider the day and the time, consider their schedule. And then this is something we recommend even when you're doing active recruitment, like utilizing our broadcast email. You don't try to limit the graphics, attachments, pictures or things like that. Also, things such as like money signs in the subject line or anything like that is really not going to attract this particular type of candidate. You have anything you want to add about emails? Like, you handle this more than I do.
No, just the fact that, don't be a spammer, kind of do a targeted site on that side of it. But you can include like an image, but the more, like I said, the more graphics and photos and attachments and things that you include, the more likely it is to go to their junk or spam folder or even get blocked. So just kind of short and sweet and to the point on that side of it.
We see a lot. I mean, I know that this is kind of not specific to passive recruitment, but even, with the emails, keeping things relatively short and then including a link to the job posting so that way they can actually click on that link and get more information from there versus including all that in the email and have it be really long, just have a link to the actual job posting itself.
Right, and make sure at the bottom of the email that you put your signature line in there as well. All your contact information.
Okay, so we're finishing up, guys. We're just going to do a little review of the key takeaways. So as far as passive candidates, they make up 75% of the workforce. So if you don't have any type of strategy in place right now, or you're not reaching out to passive candidates, you're missing out on, a large portion of that pie. So they're often open to new opportunities. They may not be actively seeking them, but they'll still peruse and search job boards and be open to new opportunities. They shouldn't be overlooked as potential recruits. They can be found through databases, events, referrals, publications, and other resources. And they are most compelled by effective job postings or quality job postings, familiar employer branding, and a strong social media presence. So that leads us to the question portion. We've really enjoyed being with you guys today. We hope we've been insightful and that you've learned a thing or two, but Lake and I are both open to any questions if anyone has anything.
Thank you so much, Gray. And folks, if you're able to unmute yourselves, if you want to throw out a question, please feel free. Otherwise, you can throw something in the chat as well. I have a question while folks are maybe typing something or waiting to ask a question. I'm curious if you've seen any changes with passive recruitment with COVID. Has COVID changed any of all of the wonderful information you just shared with us?
I do think that it has. Like I mentioned earlier, one specific way that I encounter a lot in recent, over the last 2 years is, of course, talking with clients just about, it seems like they're not getting as many direct job responses, no matter what job board they're using. It seems like responses are down. So I don't know if that's indicative of people just kind of hunkering down and staying put. I do know that a lot of them have had to incorporate more passive recruitment because of those active candidate job responses being at least down somewhat. So I do think that a lot of the clients we work with have had to, if they have sourcers, really kick them into high gear. And then even the smaller, FQHCs that I've spoken with just really ramping up their their outreach through passive recruitment, using passive databases, that type of thing. But I do think that COVID has had an impact. Of course, I mentioned the virtual side of things too. It seems like people are there's not as many opportunities for them to be in person, with career fairs. It's kind of had to be a natural shift for everyone to go to virtual just because of COVID. But I don't know, Lake, I know Lake talks to a lot more clients than I do on a daily basis. What have you seen?
No, I mean, you kind of covered that. I think, like I said, the traffic is as much or more than it's ever been, but the actual kind of the direct responses, is down a little bit. Just seems like there are more and more passive candidates for the last couple of years.
Great, thank you. All right, what other questions do we have for Gray and Lake in the last few minutes here, folks?
And also talk about boxing or pickleball if you'd like.
I would really like to hear about that. So pickleball, I've recently learned, is like all the craze.
Yeah, I'll have to, you and I are gonna have to get together. I'll bring my paddles when I come to New Hampshire. And if it's still warm, we'll maybe get out of the court if it's possible. Yeah, we love it.
That'd be so fun.
Oh, it looks like I think Caroline does have a question.
Good afternoon. I'm over here in Wyoming. I just had a quick question. I liked what you included about like the social media thing, and sometimes I get a little bit stuck because I'm not really sure, what's gonna help maybe just be good stuff to have on there. Do you have any recommendations of good people to follow on Twitter or LinkedIn that you feel like would be good, I don't know, like role models to kind of feel like, oh yeah, this would be a good thing to do, follow after?
Sure, absolutely. Caroline, I'll get, I'm sure, do you use PracticeLink currently?
You do? Yep, I've got an account.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So that'll make it easy for me to grab your email address, and I can send you over some folks that we know and follow that we feel like do a really good job. And then also we have some great blog posts as well. Some PracticeLink recruiter blog posts where they touch on, what to include and how often, and content, those types of things. So I can share a couple of articles with you as well, and then a couple for you to follow that might help you. That's a great idea.
I love that, and thank you. And I'm happy to even put my email in the chat if that's easiest, whatever's.
That would be perfect. Thank you so much. Are you going to be in New Hampshire?
I am.
Yay. Well, awesome. Lake and I will both be there, so we'll look forward to getting to meet you then.
I look forward to it as well. Thank you so much.
And guys, if you are shy and don't want to ask questions, I'm going to be sending a copy of the presentation over to Christine and to Mark, and we'll be able to, you'll have both Lake and I's contact information. And then of course, if you want to save your questions until you see us in person in a couple weeks, we'd be happy to help then as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gray. And thank you, Lake. That's very kind of you. I'm going to go through just a few last minute things here, and I'll keep an eye on the chat. Again, just want to extend a huge thanks to you both for taking the time today to share information with our attendees. And again, thank PracticeLink for the continued support of 3RNET and our annual conference, for which we are so grateful. As Gray mentioned, she and Lake will be with us in Manchester, so we are very excited to see them there. Be sure to stop by and say hey to them. We will also, our keynote speaker I wanted to mention is PracticeLink's CEO, Ken Allman. So we're very excited to have him present and have him there with the conference there in Manchester. We will be sending out the recording, so please look for that through the network coordinators listserv. If we can include the slides, if you can send those along, Gray, that would be great. As long as, as well as that job templates document you mentioned. If you want to pass that along too, I'd be happy to include that. Let's see here. Let me just double check the chat. Looks like we're good. Some thanks there. Thank you everyone for being here today. I cannot wait to see you all in New Hampshire in just a couple short weeks. It's going to be here before we know it. Safe travels. I hope no one experiences any travel hiccups. And we will be there to say hey and to do some fantastic networking and to have some great education in Manchester. We're so looking forward to it. Thank you again and have a great day, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Everyone.
Safe travels, everybody. See you soon.